Hello and good day to you all, my beautiful friends. I do hope you're well. Welcome to episode 120 of Cross Button VR, our journey into the world of VR. I'm your host, Reece, and it's an honour to be joined by the writer of The Invisible Hour, Farpoint, and many other games. It's Rob Yescombe. There, I did it right.
That sounds exactly right. I'll take it.
How
I
you
give
doing?
that a 9.2.
A 9.2. Can we just go with a 10 just for the fun of it?
Well, listen, statistically, there's a 10, so absolutely yes. In the
There you
excellent
go.
range.
Every reviewer out there that puts 9.8, you're just saying that's a 10.
Yeah. Aren't
Yeah,
you?
9.8 does not exist. If anyone says, if any reviewer says this is a 9.8, I'm like, just give it a 10. That's
Yeah,
a waste of
who's
time.
being dissuaded by 0.2?
There's a few. It always baffles me. How you doing anyway?
So far, so good.
Good.
Luxuriating in glamorous Birmingham.
Oh,
As you know, the epicenter of England.
yes. The heat at the moment from there is excruciating, like we were speaking about prior. But anyways, Rob, I have got a ton of questions for you today. I say a ton, it's not a ton, it's 10 questions. We're going to be going over.
I only do 9.8 questions. That's
9.8 questions. Okay, that's
agreed.
fine. Well, we can scrap the last one, and I'll just do one word from it, and then we'll leave it at that. And
That sounds great.
Brilliant. I'm liking the way this is going already. You're bouncing off my humour. I was kind of nervous at first.
Please.
Right, before we jump into all the questions, let me just quickly get the spew, as we call it, out of the way. If you would like to support us, please give this podcast a sub on the service you're using. If you're watching us on YouTube, please remember to hit that like and subscribe button, and why not leave us a comment too? You can find us on Twitter and Blue Sky at CrossButton VR, and now also on Ko-fi, which is ko-fi, where you can support us and help us pay for all things that keep the lights on around here. A big shout out to Golu and Phil, who are monthly members. We appreciate you a lot. So, Rob, are you ready for these questions?
Lay it on me, boss.
Right. First one. Simple. Just tell us a bit about yourself. Who you are. The worst question of all the questions.
That's a nice broad one to get into. Sure. Well, for people who don't know, I'm a writer, but I've also been across sort of elements of design and narrative direction and all sorts of stuff. I've been working in games. I think this is my 20th year, I think now. I started out in flat games, transitioned mostly into VR stuff, which is mostly what I do now, and a little bit in movies as well. So I write for games and I write for movies. In terms of VR stuff that I've been across, I wrote Farpoint for PlayStation.
That will be one of the questions.
Did a little bit of work on Half-Life Alyx, but just a tiny little piece.
I did not know that.
A game called How We Saw that no one remembers, which was like an early era VR game where you were riding on the back of a giant phoenix, exploring the imagination of an author. God, what else have I done? Oh, of course, I wrote Arizona Sunshine 2 recently.
Brilliant game.
And the rest, I guess, I have forgotten. So for now, that's it.
Well, that's good because I actually have a list of your games up anyway.
Oh, okay,
so
great. Please,
if you do want to go into some of them that you've wrote, I mean, VR, I think you've scratched the surface in all your VR ones, apart from obviously the Invisible Hour hours, which we'll dive into as well because that's one of the main reasons why we've got you here is to talk about that. The fact that you now have your game back, you're
already segueing into that section.
I know. We might as well jump straight into that question. Let's just do that one straight away because
skip the games. Let's talk about the main event.
Well, let's get out of the way then. Let's go straight into it. So obviously, you finally got the Invisible Hours back into your arms, and you plan to remake it and also adapt it into either movie or TV.
Yeah. So the way that came about was so for people who don't know, the Invisible Hours was a game that I co-created, wrote, and narrative directed for a studio in Madrid called Tequila Works, who are perhaps best known for making Rhyme, which I also wrote. And in VR, they did the Groundhog Day sequel that came out. A wonderful studio, really lovely people. Sadly, fell by the wayside this year and went into administration, which means in Spain what happens is all of the assets that the company owns, including the IP, has to go to auction, which is not necessarily the case with other companies that might go into administration in other countries in the world. So it really was a unique opportunity to see if others could reclaim the rights because you don't know where they're going to go. And for people who don't know what the game is, the best way to explain the invisible hours is when people who come from movies and TV, when they think about, oh, what is a game story, the thing they immediately think about is branching narrative, right? Left door, right door, upstairs, downstairs. And the reason why branching narrative was created was to try and, I guess, mimic some of the naturalism of life, right? Because life is full of choices. But in reality, the way that you encounter choices in life is not, oh, I went in a straight line, I got to this fixed point with these two possible choices. Like, there are many subtle shades and variables that don't make that a fixed moment of choice. By which I mean, at this exact moment in time, you, Reece, are the protagonist in this story, and I am the humble supporting character who showed up to bore you on the podcast. However, at the exact same moment in time, sorry, I'm the protagonist, and you're the supporting character who showed up. And the
Didn't agree
people
to that.
walking past the window over here are background to us, but we're background to them. And all of our stories need to be perfectly synchronized. They all need to be equally important and equally unimportant in order for reality to exist in the shape in which we are currently experiencing. So I thought, well, wouldn't it be fun to try and turn that into a system and transplant it into VR? So The Invisible Hours is a sort of Agatha Christie style murder mystery. So it's on an island in a mansion in a storm. It takes 1 hour to go through, but because there are 7 suspects in the mansion, there's actually 7 hours of concurrent narrative all happening inside the single hour. So what that means from a playing point of view is if you go into the mansion and you see, well, here's a detective standing over a dead body. I'm not presented with the choice to follow the detective upstairs to the attic, let's say, but I might choose to do that. And while I'm up there, it doesn't tell me how long I should spend there, but however long I decide to spend hanging out with this guy, I'm going to miss what's happening in the drawing room, the dining room, the bedroom, the basement. And the net result of that is you and I, even though we're in the same exact story, could have totally different opinions on who the murderer is, how many murders took place, even what genre of story we're inside of, purely based on how we behave inside that unit of time. So sounds complicated, but the net result is it feels like real life.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect way of putting it. I'm also very sad to say that I never actually got around to playing the Invisible
You
Hours.
weren't alone, and I'll tell you why. Because when we put that game together, we conceptualized it before there was any hardware on the market. It
Oh,
was
okay.
the early days of like prototype Vive, and that was kind of it. And not to call out any individual company, but a company whose job it was to project hardware sales. I want to stress, not a hardware manufacturer or anyone like that. So it was a third party whose job it was to project hardware sales. Projected 6 million units of PSVR by Q4 that year. They only sold something like 500,000. So
Yeah.
even though the game was reviewed extremely well and the players that played it reviewed it extremely well, there was no hardware to play it on. So that's why now, that game came out in 2017. Here we are almost 10 years later. There's probably, 20 million quests in the wild, plus however many PSVR 2s,
Yeah.
plus so many new PCVRs,
PCVR,
plus,
yep.
whatever else is
Pico.
coming in.
I mean, if you include that anymore, I mean, do
So
people include Pico?
Right. So my feeling is that this is essentially a entirely new product that let's say 9.8% of the audience, or 98% of the audience haven't played, but it's been stress tested, it's been play tested, it's been reviewed, and we know that players like it. So it's
Yeah.
this incredibly unique opportunity to say, well, hey, we have this product that we know is good. All we need to do now is polish it up and make it for a new generation.
Perfect. I mean, I think I know the reason why I didn't play it, and it's not anything to do with the game itself. It's because I actually got my first VR headset in 2018.
Right.
And when I got my headset, I kind of went forward with what games were releasing and not really jumping back to anything that were already released,
Right.
which I regret massively. I'm now, I mean, by all means, I'll probably end up grabbing it on PC and playing it on there at some point before you hopefully get to finalize this remake and get to the point.
Unquestionably get to do the remake. Come
Oh,
on now.
that's maybe I should just wait then. Maybe I should wait for the definitive edition of the game.
Well, I will say we've already had some very positive conversations with publishers who for now I can't name,
Good.
but I think looking solid. However, for anyone listening who might be in that space, the door is still open. We're still very keen to talk to potential partners on it. On the dev side as well, still a possibility.
Brilliant. That's very good news. I mean, another question I wanted to ask, obviously, with you now I'll let you take a sip of your water first, but you can just listen. With you remaking the game, do you plan to add anything further to it in terms of story, gameplay elements, or anything like that you want that wasn't there before?
Short answer, yes. Long answer, I don't want to say what those things would be yet, but
Brilliant.
It's interesting that Meta is becoming increasingly interested in people watching linear media in VR, watching movies, watching TV, and here we have something that is 100% story focused. And so it feels like it's the kind of product that in the Venn diagram of their new alignment and what they want to try and achieve.
It's something definitely made for them.
There's overlap there. So I think figuring out how to index that overlap on a design level is the focus, right? How can we make it more pleasant for viewers who aren't used to VR? And also how can we add mechanics for people who've been in VR for the last 10 years and try to meet somewhere in the middle?
Yeah, that's always the difficult thing, is because obviously, especially new games as well, you play something now and it's like, well, this is far too advanced for somebody who's breaking into VR.
Mm-hmm.
And then you play a different week and it's like, well, this is anywhere in the spectrum of what I would play in VR because it's too dimmed down. It's for a newer person, but there's rarely ever that medium between the two styles of games now.
Well, I'll tell you what we tried to do. Even then, we were conscious of very, very new players who may not even have arrived through the pipeline of playing games, and also being conscious of people who are like, coming through PC gaming who are very, very well versed in what mechanical design means. And the way you can explore the invisible hours is you have total freedom in time and space. You can, if you want, jump to the end of the story, play it backwards. You still won't solve the murder doing that. So it's written in a way that you can try and cheat it, even though you can pause, you can rewind. It's like a movie that you can stand in the middle of and rewind it around you. It doesn't matter what you do. There are mysteries going both ways, up ways, down ways. It's very, very complex. But for new players, we invented a thing that we called grandma mode at the time, which is that you can point at the character and say, I just want to follow this person. And the game will just take you along with them and place you in the right spots to watch their story in an interesting way. So you can be very active in trying to solve a mystery for yourself, or you can be very passive and just let it play out. You're still going to get an interesting experience both ways.
I think that's a really good idea. I mean, I certainly know people that would enjoy this game. I mean, even my partner, I actually said, "Oh, get Rob on the podcast," and she was like, oh, "Okay, cool," because I said about Jackpot. We watched that, and I'll go into that because I've got some questions about that as well. But I was saying this game feels like a game that's made for her because she absolutely loves murder mystery games, but she finds there's not many on PC that would kind of really grip her. She likes the narrative where you can follow different stories. You can find out what's happening for these different people. You either kind of go to one place or another. So I think for her alone, I think like she's going to absolutely love this when it eventually comes out in its new.
We did,
form.
I remember when it first came out, there were lots of people who did play it with their partners watching. So you got to kind of decide together. And I think that one of the things that makes the Invisible Hours pretty unique as a detective game is that oftentimes, and this is not to disparage other products, it's just a different style. It's very hard for someone to be an actual real detective, real world style, and have that work well with mechanical design. Usually it ends up being like, oh, I've got this hexagonal piece that fits in this hexagonal hole. That's the detective work, let's say. The Invisible Hours really is about emotional detective work. What do I perceive this person's motive to be? The game's not going to tell you. It's up to you to pursue that line. And that's what I mean about trying to pursue something that feels like real life.
It's a very interesting way of doing it. And like you said, it's quite unique. And I think even in terms of like you said, that was made in 2017. I still don't think anything's kind of done something similar to that in a way.
No,
like you said, detective games are It's like, okay, you've got a magnifying glass. Go find out what its blood spatter is on the floor and find out who killed this person. You're walking around an area trying to discover all that kind of stuff. I
Mhm.
don't think a game has been done like the Invisible Hours, and that's coming from someone who's not played it, just hearing the way you've spoke about it. And I have watched gameplay and parts of it as well. And yeah, I genuinely don't think I've seen anything kind of do that the way you've done it. So I think it does. It still really has a place in the market for, I don't know, just
I
a
hope so. Yeah, I hope so.
just
I mean,
for a comeback.
I think so. I feel like we're primed for it. I mean, I think one of the reasons why we haven't seen anything like it is even though, from a player's perspective, it feels very simple, like
Yeah,
feels elegantly simple. To actually make it is mathematically very, very complex because let's say you and I are characters in the scene. I know that as a writer, I have to get you out of this scene at 1 minute, 17 seconds in. There's another scene in progress that I need you to get into at 3 minutes, 4 seconds. Not only am I calculating getting you out of this scene on time, getting you into that scene on time, let's say that scene is on the 2 stories up in the mansion. I'm calculating the speed and distance for you to go from this scene to that scene as well. And that's across hundreds of intersecting scenes that all depend on each other. And the truth is, you get 5 seconds out of sync, the whole thing breaks.
yeah, because you're
So,
going to miss stuff, aren't you?
no, I'm talking about on a production level
Oh,
because
okay.
for instance, if you and I were actors in a play where we had that same problem, if you run 20 seconds late, you're like, oh, I messed it up. I tripped on the stairs or I stayed in that scene too long, whatever it is. The actors who are waiting for you can fill, they can improvise. But
Yeah,
here,
exactly.
everything is pre-baked animation. So it
Yeah.
means that if we miscalculate something, 7 hours of intersecting narrative crumbles. So it meant that something that's very difficult about doing that is that when you're doing something that's very story focused, what you're selling is performance and emotion. But you're doing something that has to be so perfectly timed, like clockwork. How do you get people to be real and emotional when they are against the stopwatch in performing in those scenes? So we did something in pre-production that is very unusual for games. We spent a long time in rehearsal. Just in like a church hall in London, we spent weeks running those scenes against the stopwatch. And what we found was if you do it to the second, the emotion goes out of it. But of course, we can't leave too much leeway because that's going to break the mathematics. So
Yeah.
what we ended up agreeing on was we're going to drill those scenes to a 5 second margin. And then when we get to the motion capture stage, we'll tighten it up on the day. And that was the part that was kind of made it feel alive, that people knew they kind of had to be a little bit more engaged with what they were doing because if we had to lose that for those 5 seconds. So
Blimey.
very, very mathematical, but you're trying to hold on to the emotion at the same time. So to make something like it is very, very, very difficult. To play something like it, elegantly simple.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, the way you're making it all sound, I say making it all sound, the way you're kind of going through the process of it, it sounds like an absolute headache of developing a game.
It,
But the end product comes out something truly unique that hasn't been done before. And like you said, a simplistic thing for everyone to enjoy, I think is the best way of putting it. Not simplistic in the terms of like,
yeah.
this is a very, but you get what I mean. Like,
The
I
barrier for
find,
entry is low, but
yeah,
it that doesn't mean that it's a simplistic game. It's narratively very, very, very complex.
no,
You
yeah,
will
no,
be pulled through, but it
wrong
means
wording.
that your grandma can play it, your kids can play it, and you can play it. If you're a gamer, you'll find stuff in there that will surprise you.
Brilliant. So, I mean, you also mentioned that this is going to, you want to get this adapted to TV and movie. What's the process of that? Is that something is it the game that's going to be worked on first, or are you going to be doing it kind of in sync with each, or
Part of that depends on
who wants it, I
who takes
suppose?
interest in and when.
Yeah.
I think, practically speaking, yes, you can do creative development on an adaptation in this time, but in terms of the value of the IP is generated by the game. So the
Ah, okay.
sensible thing to do is, yes, we can do creative development now, but in terms of when that would turn into a product, the game has to come first because that's what is going to start interest in that as an adaptation. As far as whether it's TV or film, I think it's the door is open at the moment. We haven't really zeroed in on which of those it would, could, or should be because you want to find a way to, I want to say, pay homage to the structural complexity of the game that can't be mimicked
Yeah,
in a movie.
exactly.
But it doesn't mean you can't do something like that. I mean, people talk a lot about the movie Rashomon, which is a movie about people's individual perspectives on a single event. The difference with Rashomon, for anybody who's seen it, is what we're shown as viewers, we're shown their misinterpretations, which is their sort of imagined version, like the unreliability of an eyewitness. Whereas in The Invisible Hours, everything you see is true, but it's contextualized by the things that you know or don't know. So, for example, there's a scene in The Invisible Hours where two characters, their eyes meet across a room. They feel some kind of strange connection. They talk and then they kiss. And maybe you arrive into that scene cold and you think, well, that seems like a romantic scene, I guess. Or maybe you arrived into the scene with the knowledge that he's a murderer and she doesn't know. Same scene, but it feels different.
Yeah.
Or maybe you arrived into the scene knowing, oh, she's not who she says she is. She's a liar. She's pretending to be somebody else and he doesn't know. Or maybe you arrived into it knowing they're actually father and daughter and neither of them knows. And now you're watching them make out. So it's the same scene becomes totally different based on the knowledge you have when you arrive into that scene.
Wow.
Right. And the
Good way of
beauty of
putting it.
Invisible Hours is that pretty much every scene is that. What you arrive with is going to completely change your interpretation at that moment.
Brilliant. Well, I look forward to finally experiencing it because it sounds like something I'm actually going to enjoy.
Thank you so much. That's one. We got one.
We got one. We got one. But I mean, I could, like I say, I could buy the game on PC now. But do you even get any of the kickback for that anymore if I buy the game on PC?
Supposed to, but we're working all that stuff.
Okay, we'll ignore that. We'll speak about that after the show. Right. So the next question I've got for you, I think this kind of works quite well because we actually had somebody on the show before who did a whole kind of paper on writing VR games and narratives. So I was wanting to ask you, when writing a story for a VR game, do you find it's more difficult as stories and narratives don't always translate well into VR?
Actually, the opposite. I think that
You feel the opposite. Okay.
I think that the thing that you're doing in VR, especially in something narrative, if you're a character, you are being that character. You are inside. You're puppeteering them.
See, I would agree, but there's certain games where they kind of, and this is my problem with VR. As a person who plays pretty much 90% of my gaming now is VR. I find where sometimes they go, this is a story-driven game, but then they kind of overflow it with gameplay elements, and then gameplay elements be, really in depth, and they're the really interesting side of the game to the point where they kind of overpower the narrative they're trying to tell you. To the point where the story's happening, but at the same point you're just kind of, I don't know, juggling a box because that gameplay element feels incredibly cool, and you miss the story. And I find this happens quite a lot in VR. And I've had this discussion before, and we actually had a developer on who've the developer of Sushi Ben. I don't know if you've ever heard of the game,
Mm-hmm.
but his whole game was a story narrative about you kind of rebuilding this sushi restaurant. And after each segment, you'd sit down with the person who's helped you, and you'd have some sushi together. And it was a really weird way of telling this narrative of the story and building these characters. But it was done in such a unique way because you got the ending of each story part because it didn't force you to walk around a room. You couldn't touch anything else. You just kind of got that whole piece of the story thrown at you. And I found that worked better than having free movement when in story narrative games, especially for me myself. Like,
I think that. Let me answer it a different way. But for the last 120 years, a movie has been 2 hours, and somebody learns something about themselves at the end, and that's a movie. Games, I've been working games for 20 years. I still can't tell you what the game is because Grand Theft Auto is a game. So is Angry Birds.
Yeah.
So is Boyfriend Dungeon. So is Metal Gear. And those products, those games have no overlap in how they tell stories, the technology, the audience, what you play them on, what the mechanics are. Yes, there are lots of products that do overlap, but there are tons of them that don't. And some of them are just islands unto themselves. You can't even say that games are about winning. We know that's not really true anymore either.
Yeah, that's not the case anymore.
And I think that the rules and principles of Aristotle's Poetics, which is the sort of seminal text on story, they've been the same for the last 3,000 years. But when you're writing for games, and I include VR and games in this together, you are designing a new equation that will solve how story is delivered in that individual product. And every game that I work on, yes, there are some parts you reuse from experience, but most of the time you're designing a new equation to say, for this product, how is story best delivered? I don't think that there is a reason why it's harder to do it in VR or harder to do it in flat games. I think it's purely about the product, the people, um, and the ambition. There's always a way to do something interesting.
Yeah.
What I can tell you though is having worked as a freelancer for many years, if you're writing a movie, generally speaking, the bedrock on which the production is built is the script. Whereas in games, that's not true at all. Usually what you're doing as a games writer, and The Invisible Hours is maybe one of the very rare exceptions, but mostly what you're doing is explaining content. Some designer figured out, oh, if this block moves along and bumps these other blocks and goes up this flagpole, that's fun. And the game writer comes along and says, well, what if that's Mario and he's going to rescue the princess? You contextualize something that they have figured out is already fun. So oftentimes when story and design don't work together, it's because the people creating the narrative, who are not necessarily writers, but sometimes are, aren't willing to accept that dynamic, that most of the time you're there to explain fun. That doesn't mean the story can't be great, but you have to be in deference to design.
Very intriguing. I feel like you're going to keep giving me answers that's going to kind of make me go, yeah, just blow my very, very tiny mind.
I don't believe that for a second. You've got plenty of room in there.
Well, I mean, in the room, I've got plenty of room. So, talking of movie, last year you made Jackpot. Well, you wrote the story of Jackpot, which was, was there a different process of that than writing games?
Extremely. So,
Extremely?
for anybody that doesn't know, Jackpot is a movie that I wrote that was directed by Paul Feig, who directed Bridesmaids, starred John Cena, Awkwafina, and Simu Liu. It's an action comedy that, interestingly, has a very game design sensibility about it. Because the thing I'm very conscious of, right? Having worked in games for many years, I've worked in some very data-driven companies, and I'm very conscientious and cognizant about what's probably happening behind the UI of Netflix or Amazon or whatever, which is that the odds of a user rowing across 5, columning across 10, landing on a tab, that converting to a view, the odds are pretty slim, maybe zero. And the way that the movie studio, de-risks that problem is with cast, who are very expensive, or with the algorithm, whose influence ends on the edge of the platform, or with premise that's free. Because ultimately, a large part of the success, particularly of a movie, comes down to two people who I'm never going to meet, two strangers somewhere in the Midwest, are going to say to each other, hey, what's the movie about? And if that other person can't answer that question with ease and laser beam precision, it's very hard for them to convince somebody else to watch your movie. So most of the stuff I do is very premise driven. So to say, Jackpot is about it's an action comedy, a dystopian future where there's a lottery where if you win, everybody else who has a ticket has 24 hours to kill you. And if they kill you, they get the money. So the process of that is going to sound simple, but also challenging, which is I was having lunch with my UK agent, Nish Panchal at Crysis Brown in London. I said, hey, I have this idea for a movie that I was originally was a game design thing. And I thought, this could work as a movie. He said, okay, write it. I wrote it. He gave it to my now US agent, Martin Spencer at Innovative. The following day, he gave that script to Jeff Kirschenbaum, who produces the Fast and Furious movies. The following morning, Jeff said he wanted to do it. That all sounds easy. That's a few days.
That's the good side of it.
Apart from the writing part, which took a while. But then, Jeff at Arcade Films, which is his company, then does the really hard part, which is trying to bring the package together that will persuade a studio to buy the production. He's very good at what he does, obviously, and so we were lucky that we got a really great cast and director together, and off we went. And it was a
Yeah.
blast.
I mean, I was going to say it was a blast to watch, and I'm not just saying that. It was a really good film. It was a good laugh. It was nothing too serious in terms of a film that you just want to kind of chill back and watch.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, me and my partner, we sat down and watched it, and we had a good time with it. It was really good. It was a good laugh, and I never put it on because of the actors. I put it on because your name was attached to it.
Well, that's
So, and I'm not just
okay.
saying that, but that's because I've grown up playing your games. Well, not your games, but the games you've wrote stories for.
Okay. Oh, well, tell me about that. I want to hear. In what
So, I
ways have
mean,
I traumatized you as a child?
I'm going to say the one that probably traumatized me the most was Haze. I know you wrote the story,
Oh yeah.
but the story weren't bad. It was just the game was bad.
I think the story was pretty bad too. So for anybody that
Yeah, I
doesn't know,
mean,
that
but
was
I probably played that back when I was like, I want to say maybe 13, or every story sounded good in my mind. There, you added guns, and just I was like, oh yes, guns, this is great. A super serum, awesome. Let's go with it. It was,
it
it kind
was
of worked.
so for anyone that doesn't know, Hayes was actually the first game I ever worked on. And I think it's interesting because I got very lucky getting onto that game. And in those days, the barrier for entry for games writing was kind of low because it wasn't really a discipline at that point.
Yeah,
There was writing in games, but it was usually done by multi hyphenates, like a designer would do it or a coder would do it, whatever. So I got lucky to work on that game, and I was coming into it, and this is back in end of 2004. I think I worked on that. 2005. I had tons of enthusiasm,
released. Yeah, that's probably when you started working on it.
but no craft. I didn't really know, how to write something good. All I knew was I was really enthusiastic about trying, which is it's part of the battle. But for anybody listening who does want to get into, the arts with a capital A, know that the minute you accept that your enthusiasm is not enough to carry you, things will change for the better. I promise you. And that was the thing that did it to me. It was a tough way to learn that lesson, but a very, very valuable lesson.
I mean, I was going to say, like, if we go from your enthusiasm, you learning from that point that that's not the thing that's going to carry you. Well, you can certainly tell that your career kind of, with what games you wrote for, went better from Hayes.
Thanks.
Like,
I hope so.
considerably. And I don't mean that in a nasty way, because again, at the time, I mean, I probably didn't pay too much attention to the writing as a young Reece back then, but I did later play it again on the PS3 because I remember picking up PS3 and picking up Haze. Like, oh, I liked that as a kid. And I picked it up and I was like, no, how did I like this, or did I was?
I'll pass along your criticism to the team.
Yeah, please do, please do. I mean, I'm sure they went on to make better things. I don't know all of the people behind it, but in terms of, like I said, the writing you've done, the games you wrote for, I've pretty much played. I was going to say about 80% of the games you wrote for.
Okay, thanks. What's the 20% you haven't played?
What's the 20% I haven't played?
Got the Invisible Hours. We've got to get you on that. What else?
Invisible Hours. I haven't played the Precinct yet. I know you did additional writing for that.
Yes, although I wouldn't lay claim to that as my
Yeah,
writing.
let's not include that then. I haven't played Rambo video game. Actually, let's
okay. You can skip that one. Keep going.
Yeah, I was going to say we can ignore that one. I think I played a little bit of Rhyme.
Oh, thank you. Well, that's the.
So actually,
it's
probably about 90% then, because I've done Farpoint.
Oh, you did.
Done the Twilight Zone, Arizona Sunshine 2, Division, Cube. That was actually the first game I bought on PC.
Really?
Yes.
Well, I'm thrilled.
It wasn't the director's cut at that point. It was the original standard edition, which later got upgraded to the director's cut. That was the first game I bought on PC. If I go back through my Steam library and go to my first purchase, Cube.
Wow.
So if you still speak to the developers there, pass that along. It was one of the reasons I actually wanted to sign up to Steam. I saw it. I was like, this looks like Portal. I want this game. And I went out and bought a PC. First game I picked up. Loved it. Absolutely loved it.
Great.
Crysis 2, Crysis 3. Two of my probably my most favorite FPS games that I've played. Crysis 2 more so than 3. But yeah, I mean, in terms of the games that are, I suppose you're credited for, I should say. Yeah, I've played pretty much most
That's
of them.
high praise. A super fan, you might say.
I'm going to be honest here. Okay. So
would you like me to send you a lock of my hair, Reece? Tell me the truth.
You don't have any, and I'm sorry to put it that way. I said bluntly. Don't worry, I'm fading.
I can grow a sort of goatee.
That's why I'm wearing
snips of the goatee.
That's why I'm wearing a hat.
I sympathise.
But in all seriousness, when the email came through, and and our previous host Alex passed it on to me. I was like, "Fucking Rob," and he was like, "Who is it?" I was like, "You don't know who Rob Yescombe is?" Well, I said Yescombe at that point because I pronounced your surname wrong, which I butchered, and we corrected. But I was like, "Dude, he's done this and this and this," and I'm like, "Oh damn! I wonder if I can get him on the." Like, I was hyped and genuinely like, I've actually been quite nervous to do this
Well, thanks,
because
man.
I've played your games, like the stuff you've wrote for. I say your games, and I mean that in a figurative term, but I've played these stories that you've wrote, and especially things like Farpoint. I think that's one of the greatest stories I've played in a VR setting.
Thank
It
you.
was fantastic, and yeah. So I suppose in this, I'm gonna have a little bit of a fan moment, but yeah, I'm incredibly happy to have you here, just simply because of that. It is,
Reece, the
yeah.
feeling is mutual. Now, listen, I got a question for you.
Go on.
What is that hanging on the back of your door in the back?
Alex asked us, but that is a B haptics vest, which stimulates vibration.
Okay.
Yeah. So when you get shot in VR, you kind of feel it.
I know it well, yeah.
And I have the little wrist things that are hanging over it as well, so you can feel them on your arm. Very
That's
cool. Really
commitment.
good product. Yeah, I've got it on the Quest as well, so you can feel it in your head. If anyone hits you in the head, it kind of vibrates your
Right.
skull.
I mean, we're only one step away, finally, from you die in the game, you die in real life. Like that's the pinnacle. That's what we're trying to get to, guys.
Yeah, let's get that. Oh god, what game would it be though? Like, what game would you want to die in? That's the real question here, isn't it?
What's the one I'm going to survive the longest in? I mean, whew. I guess if I can stay still and super hot, I'll just do that.
You'd be absolutely fine. Absolutely fine. Just stand there, just
yeah. As long as I do nothing, fine.
Yeah. Although you might be very skilled in that world, so you know. Another question I have for you is: have you always been a gamer, and did you decide you always wanted to write for games?
Yeah, when I was a kid, I started on the first game I ever played. I think was on BBC Micro in the early like
I
mid
don't
80s.
even know what that is.
Right, and then from there went to the Amstrad, and in those days, the games were on cassette tapes, and it took like 40 minutes to load one game. So if you were going to play a game, you had to be really sure this was the one you wanted to play.
Put the game in, go for dinner, come back, you're ready to go.
In those days, like you'd sit there and watch the loading screen for 40 minutes. Like it would just do one line at a time in the Matrix. Whoa, this is so cool. So I went from Amstrad. I couldn't convince my parents to get me a SNES or a Mega Drive. So they got me an Amiga 500 because they thought I could do my homework on it. And on the Amiga 500s, there was a program called Deluxe Paint, which it was kind of like Microsoft Paint, which at the time was mind-blowing, but it also had a thing where you could animate 30 frames. And that blew my mind as a kid. Like you can make animation on a computer. That really boggled my mind.
Yeah.
From there, I started doing like stop motion animation, but this is a pre-internet age. And I didn't really know how to find out how to do it. Like I didn't know anyone who could teach me, so I was kind of guessing my way through it. And then from there, I went to PlayStation 1. And when I played Metal Gear Solid, that was the game where I was like, whoa. Hearing the writing, how much character there was, how much emotion, how much research.
Yeah.
I remember hearing Snake talk about the 97 starter chords and nuclear politics and stuff. I was like, what is this?
How did you fit all this into a game kind of thing? Yeah.
Well, it was more like this is something that can be in a game.
Yeah.
Prior to that, story was in games was mostly, with the exception of like point and click stuff, was kind of mostly context. It wasn't the driving thrust of your motive to play the game. But playing that game, I was like, I want to know what happens next. And that was the one that really set me on the path. So in answer to your question, yeah, right from the beginning, I knew I wanted to do something in that space. I just didn't know that writing could be a thing until Metal Gear.
Damn. That's a good way of putting it. Well, I mean, within that then, what is your earliest story you remember writing? And that's whether it got published into a game or created into a game.
The earliest thing I wrote got published.
Earliest thing you remember writing. Did anything get done with it? Did you ever look back at it and go, I could do something with that now? Or is it just a terrible idea?
I think
definitely not. I want to know more now.
There's nothing in the back catalogue that I think would meet my standards today. But what I remember was I loved creative writing at school. I also loved drawing and stuff at school. The two were kind of working off each other. I
So you've
like
always
little
been quite a
short stories.
creative person in a sense, then.
I'm sorry.
You've always been quite a creative person in a sense.
Oh, I sucked at all the other stuff for a long time. So the creative was the only thing I could kind of get away with. But yeah, I used to really love like Batman comics, and so I would write short stories that were kind of Batman adjacent, even though he didn't feature. It was sort of in the tone of Batman. And they were shit for anyone who's curious.
We'll get them. We'll get them. We'll add them to the description. That's what we're going to try and do.
Please.
I mean, I will get shot by our fans of the show if I don't ask you this question. Obviously, we spoke a little bit about Farpoint, and the it's absolutely fantastic VR game from the story, just the gameplay, everything about it. If you ever had the chance to, would you like to expand upon that? Do more for Farpoint, a sequel?
I would love to. I think that people. I think people know that the ending of Farpoint we kind of got cut short a little bit.
Yes.
And we did have plans that I remember being good. I need to look back and see what they were. But I've talked to those guys, to Impulse Gear, over the years about doing another one. It's creatively the desire is there.
Yeah, I mean, I think the want is there. Yeah, like the want from like our community. I mean, without parole, other communities that I'm in, like people want this game. Like people want Farpoint. Even if it's just a remake of the original, people want to see it again. It was such a fantastic game. I love the way it just kind of followed a path, and you had the stories between each. It kind of just worked so well. I miss it.
And also
I genuinely miss it.
The performances in it. Yes, hopefully the
fantastic.
The performances are great. Laura Bailey, who I think people know from Last of Us, is fantastic in that game. Really amazing.
So hopefully you can, once you've finished with your invisible hours, maybe you can try and.
I would love to, and truly, if anyone happens to tune in who's at Sony, let's do it. Why not?
I'm going to send this over to Sony and be like, okay, can you guys do something with this, please? Thank you. Right. Seeing as you've wrote for a fair few VR games, what are some games you've played in VR and you've enjoyed?
I got to tell you, right? I love to see new products coming out on the store, but I'm going to be honest and say, even though I try and play most new stuff, there is one game that I have played religiously for like 2 years every day, which is Dungeons of Eternity.
Oh, mate.
I'm telling you, listen, those guys, the team is like 4 people, I think.
But they know how to make an addictive game, don't they?
The thing that they mastered is the way that other people have addressed melee combat in VR is either purely physics driven, which gets kind of messy, like, oh, the sword is
janky all over the place.
And they kind of like, okay, I understand that, but the version that's pure animation also doesn't work because everything feels so canned. They've managed to hybridize those two systems in a way that just is so Moorish. It's incredible. For anyone who hasn't played it, it's essentially, for everybody over 40, it's Gauntlet in VR. For everybody under 40, it's you're fighting monsters in dungeons with really good hybrid system of physics and animation in melee combat. That is, in my opinion, unparalleled in VR.
I actually wasn't expecting you to say that, but I'm really happy you did. I mean, they said they were going to be bringing it over to PSVR 2. I've played it. I bought the Quest. And it was that was one of the first games I picked up on the Quest. And it's a great experience. It's only got better since I first started playing it.
It's fantastic.
And I really hope they do bring it over to PSVR 2 because I think the PSVR 2 players need to experience it. It's just, like you said, it's incredibly Moorish. It's just, there's something about it.
I messaged them after I played it. I was like, guys, this is incredible. We didn't know each other, but I sent them a love letter to say this is just incredible. I said, look, if you ever think about doing any kind of narrative content, just count me in, whatever it is. Whether you want that to be something big and fancy, or whether you just want to do like lore building stuff, whatever it is.
I want in on this action.
100%. I want to know. The thing that I love about the VR community of devs is we're a small family.
Yeah,
incredibly. There's only a handful that really get to sort of stay in the business. It's hard to make a big successful product in VR. So I love to see and to propagate the success of other developers. There's nothing more exciting to me than seeing someone make a great game. And holy cow, is Dungeons of Eternity is a great game.
It is fantastic. It's definitely one of the better games that's came out in VR for quite some time, to be fair. And it just functions. There's no jank to it. It just plays, you jump in, you play it, and you don't have any issues. And you can just, that's something you need more of as well. I know game development's got to the point where it's a lot more difficult to release a perfect product. And it needs patches and things like that. But I don't think I've ever had an issue with Dungeon of Eternity, which I think even adds to my experience of it.
I also want to give a shout out to the guys at Fireproof. Because
Ghost
even
Town?
though you don't play the room every day, that to me is like, it's like a rich chocolate cake. It's one slice, and it's so satisfying and so brilliant. Okay, you're probably not going to go back to it, but boy, is that an incredible product. That and Ghost Town as well is fantastic for anyone who hasn't played it.
Ghost Town, I think, at this point in time is probably up there for my game of the year. Just in terms of it's, again, incredibly polished. We were given early access to try it, and the amount of times, obviously, I'm pretty sure you've heard this in the past, when reviewers get to try games, you have issues usually. That's probably the one game we played probably about 2 weeks before release. Not a single issue. Ran like butter. It was absolutely lovely, and just the whole experience from start to finish was absolutely fantastic. And I can't wait to play it again when they bring it over to PC and PS4 too, just because it was absolutely fantastic. Story, gameplay, everything, puzzles. And the room, like you said, I mean, that was one I didn't think I was going to like it, but I walked away pleasantly surprised.
I'd been on that franchise since the iOS versions.
Oh, okay, fair play. I had not.
VR
was the first one I tried.
I mean, it's the thing that's so remarkable about that franchise is it's very story light, and yet you feel its presence.
Yeah,
and the fact that they're able to essentially take putting objects in holes in interesting boxes and have made like just this pantheon of puzzle games. Incredible. They're amazing.
Absolutely fantastic. I'm glad out of anything you can mention, I'm really glad you mentioned those two. I think that's a great selection.
Thanks.
So, but we're definitely going to play Dungeons of Eternity together now. You realise that, right?
I welcome it.
Brilliant.
Try and keep up, Reece.
Okay. Well, you're probably going to be a higher level than me. That's now the issue. I'm going to walk in and be like, oh.
I've been max level for like 2 years, man. I'm there.
Okay, I'm not max level. I need to jump back into it because I need to try it with the B haptics, and I haven't had a chance to do so. It works with that, and I've heard it's really good on there. They've done a good job at kind of working it all in with the way the explosions work. So I definitely need to try that.
Great.
So, I mean, we haven't got many more questions. We've breezed through these. I mean, in your career, I mean, we've already spoke about like Crysis 2, 3, The Division. But are there any other AAA games you'd like to write a sequel for, or any movies you'd like to adapt to a game?
I would love to adapt Jackpot to a game.
Do it.
Yeah, we've talked about it. I think it would be a great thing to do. I mean, it's designed to work as a game as well as a movie. I think it'd be really good fun.
Do you think you can get John Cena back as the voice?
Who knows?
Who knows?
Possible. I mean, it's an Amazon product. They have the checkbook. Why not?
Yeah, come on, Amazon, do it. Brilliant. And lastly, a very simple question. Obviously, we always hear about writers having writer's block and things like that. What inspires you? What keeps you going when you're writing?
I'm of the belief that when you start out and you have this desire to make art, whatever that is, I say art with a capital A, whatever your creative output is, your desire carries you forward, your inspiration carries you forward, the need carries you forward. But there comes a time when you transition into being a professional where you let go of the idea of trying to muster motivation and inspiration and replace it with discipline. And that can be a really hard transition to make. So I would like to think most of the time, inspiration is not a factor. Discipline's the factor. Sitting in front of the laptop and doing the hours in front of the page, something will happen or nothing will happen. But if nothing happens, you move closer to when something will happen. But discipline is the thing. Repetition is the thing. Routine is the thing. If you start to necessitate ideal circumstances, I must be on a Parisian balcony with a glass of red wine and a long black cigarette in order to write, you ain't going to do shit, pal. You have to know sometimes you've got to force yourself, even when it's uncomfortable. That's the discipline.
Do you ever find it easier to like write in different environments? Like, I don't know, I always see like writers. I say writers. I always see people working like from Costas, or not so much anymore because I don't ever go into a Costa anymore. But I used to see people sitting in
You've
there
moved
like
up to Cafe Nero. I think that this is me saying this is not to say
bougie.
people should not do what works for them.
Yeah.
I went through my stage of needing to go to a cafe or needing to be in an office or needing to not be in an office. I remember when I first got into games on that crummy game. When I showed up, I anticipated. I was like, well, I'm the writer. I guess I'm going to get a little office or something, right? And when I got there, they said, no. You're going to be you're on the shop floor in what they called the AI dungeon, which was the lower floor of an old NHS building, where all the windows were blacked out with bin liners because the people coding didn't want the light to reflect on their screens. There was not a desk for me because I wasn't an anticipated hire. So I had like essentially a school desk that was blocking part of the fire escape. And
so what you're telling me is you was actually a danger to everyone while you was there.
Well, in a great many ways. But the point is that it took. It was a really valuable experience because it demystified and unmagicked the idea of what writing should be and the circumstances under which it should happen. Again, not to say you can't indulge yourself, but to know sometimes if you're stuck in a bit where you say, well, I've writer's block, creative block, whatever it is, oftentimes you just need to sit in front of an empty computer and let the time pass.
Good answer. Very good answer. Only time I ever get any kind of creative block is doing thumbnails for videos. Anything like that, I hate it.
Are you going to hit the thumbnail now? What's it going to be? Let me see.
I'm just going to give you a big. I did a thumbnail last. That's the last thing I do.
I want to see the pose that you're going to do for the thumbnail.
Oh, I got to do all the wording and stuff. I ain't gonna be on the thumbnail. You're gonna be on the thumbnail.
We're going to be on the thumbnail together. Like we're going to be back to back, like Charlie's Angels.
Okay, right, so no, I can't do that, mate. I'd be like that, wouldn't it?
Did we get it?
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna have to screenshot those and then see if I can work that into the thumbnail now. And then when it's not there, when it isn't there, you're gonna be like, oh, for crying out loud, what a chicken! Why did they even do this? You're gonna be speaking to your PIs. Like, why did you agree to this?
No, this is all by design.
All by design. Well, Rob, literally, this has been a blast. And like I said, from a perspective of somebody who's been going through your work through the time to actually finally getting to speak to you, it feels quite surreal. Like I said, I was nervous about this. The surreal moment of it is because, you never know how somebody's going to be when you first speak to them, I suppose. And I've enjoyed your work and what you've done. So this has been an absolute blast. So thank you so much for doing this. Not just
thank you.
Get your own.
My pleasure.
Just to get your own word out there, but just for myself, this has been something really nice. I've liked this. So thank you for that.
Thank you. My pleasure.
And with that, let's quickly go for the little outro. So I just want to thank everyone again for listening. If you've enjoyed this episode, we'd love it if you could please tell your family and friends about us. Get on the phone, give them a ring, send them a text, all that kind of stuff. If you'd like to get more involved, please don't hesitate to drop into our Discord and say hi. And thank you for everyone that's already done so. I've been your host, Reece, and I've been joined by Rob Yescombe. And until next time, it's goodbye.